an Unspoiled Network podcast.
This is Spoil Me, covering Skysworn, the fourth book in the Cradle series. Chapters 4, 5, 6, and 7. In these chapters, we finally get to see the showdown between Lindon and Jai Long. It does not go how I expected, and neither does the whole thing with Jai Daishou. Not at all. I don't like that at all. I don't like it. Welcome to Spoil Me. Welcome to the show, everyone. I am Natasha. Thank you very much to Andy for commissioning this episode, except no thank you, and I hate you. So, Jai Daishou, as it turns out, is not going to get to reap the rewards for summoning a dread god on everybody's asses. It's not coming for him. He's dead. He got off easy. He's out of it. He doesn't even he's not even going to be here to see what he fucking wrought. Y'all, I am irritated. I am irate about it. Look, it honestly is incredibly within what we know of his character for him to do something incredibly reckless and selfish, lying to himself all the while about how this is really for the good of his family, and then die before he gets to reap the actual consequences of the thing. To me, based on what we have learned about Jai Daishou, that is well within who he is as a person, as a character. So I can't even be that mad, because I maybe should have seen it coming that that's how that was going to go. But I just really, really wanted him to get his comeuppance personally in a very specific kind of way. I wanted Jai Daishou to basically be punished by an angelic figure who is using a dread god to do it. I want, you know what it is? There's been a real dearth lately of justice in the world. And I was really hoping to get some divine fucking justice in my story. And it's kind of funny, after last week talking about how this book series lets you have some wins, that I got tricked into thinking I was about to get a win, and I did not get my win. I mean, low-key, I still did, because he's dead, and that's great, and I'm super glad he's dead now. But it's not the same. It's not him getting chased down by a giant beast, plus that beast's cult, which I was really hoping for. And you know what? I should have realized that if he were to get chased down by a dread god, it would not just go for him and chew him up and be done. I should have realized that even if it did, even if he was still alive, and this thing just came after him specifically, there are still going to be people in the way. There are still almost definitely going to be casualties. But I wasn't thinking about it in those terms. I was thinking about it in that, a divine sort of figure in the sky sent it after him. And so this thing will be coming at him like a guided fucking missile. I was thinking about it in terms that made me personally very happy, without really thinking about the actual practical application of having a creature that sounds huge traversing the countryside trying to find him. So I really should, I should have known, but I just didn't think through how that would work. I just wanted him to get got. And he got, but not, I wanted it to be more embarrassing. I guess it is pretty embarrassing because he gets got almost by the very weapon that he got to go and try and get Eithan. And also by a member of his own clan, which is also pretty fucking humiliating. So I should be happier, but I just had this idea. I had this idea of him getting plucked up by some dread god, and that god just like tilting his head back and just dropping him into his mouth, screaming, and a chomp chomp, and then, you know, like when he was in the woods and that jungle, and then there was that tree that ate a bunny. That's what I was kind of hoping for. But we can't always get what we want, can we? It's fine. I'm not going to stay too mad about it. I just needed to start with that because it was just the fact that this dread god is now something that everybody has to fucking contend with as a potential threat just is so deeply unfair. The fact that this asshole was able to unleash this shit on everybody simply because he is that fucking selfish. It makes me feel a way, kids. It really does. It's like, it's too real. That's the problem. The idea of somebody doing this kind of thing and fooling themselves into thinking it's for any sort of altruistic reason when we know good and damn well that's not true. That is too real. And I think that's why I'm like so like upset by it. So anyway, let's back up and let's go to the beginning of chapter 4 with Eithan waving cheerily at Lindon as Lindon is getting ready for this fight. And Jai Daishou is here as well. I didn't expect to see him here. I don't know why. I think that I expected him to kind of like... I really don't know why. Everything about how this goes down, there were so many things that were surprises to me that really shouldn't have been surprises. And I said in the last episode that Jai Daishou had said that he didn't even want Lindon to go through with this competition, this duel. Now, Andrew, if you're in the chat, I don't feel that we are ever given a great reason why he changed his mind, are we? Is it simply because their stock is so low, the Jai clan, that he felt like they needed to do something in order to get a little bit of honor back, and so he figured that Jai Long is absolutely guaranteed to win this fight, and so this would be the only means of sort of making a comeback and gaining some of their, what's the word I want? Their social capital back again. I think that that is the main motivation behind it. But I just didn't think he would... I kind of expected that maybe this was going to be a setup where Jai Long insisted that this continue because he isn't able to get the retribution that he wanted, and then he's going to show up and suddenly be like, you know what, you saved my sister, never mind. That was my fantasy. If everything were a rosy, perfect reality, that was my fantasy of what it would have happened here. And don't get me wrong, it actually partially does feel like that is what Jai Long would have liked to do, because Jai Long tells Lindon, dude, I don't have a quarrel with you, and you killed my brother, yes, but you brought my sister back. So as far as I'm concerned, that makes us square. We're even. And I would drop this if it were up to just me, but I can't. It's not up to just me. Andy says, we're not told explicitly, but I think it comes down to Jai Daishou's pride and pettiness. He wouldn't call it off because that would make him look weak. Now he wants Lindon killed because it'll hurt Eithan. Okay, you know what, Andy? That last part, that didn't even occur to me, but I think that's the majority of it. Is he is so personally pissed off at Eithan because Eithan fucking killed him. And Eithan also managed to like keep secret just how powerful he was, so that Jai Daishou went up against him with this total certainty that he was about to take this motherfucker down, and then got completely crushed. I mean, it was just really embarrassing. I could definitely see that changing his entire mind on how all of this is going to go down, and just basically being like, no, you know what? I thought that this was going to be like, because his choices when he was talking about this for to Jai Long, he was like, A, you beat him, and he's so far below you in standing that it's not even like an honorable win. It's not even going to look that great. Or B, you lose, which is so much worse. And he was of the opinion that either way, we don't come out looking good. Which, really, I see his point on both of those, but really the idea that you made a pact that you would see them, that you would fight in a year, and then you wriggle out of that, I think looks worse. So, to me, the idea that he really, he has figured out that Lindon is somebody that Eithan is personally attached to, because Eithan doesn't have a wife, right? I don't think he's got anybody of significance in his life other than Cassius. And Cassius is sure fucking not on the table. That's not somebody that they can go after. So if you're trying to hurt Eithan, Lindon's really the only option to do that. So I accept your reasoning, Andy. Thank you for that. It didn't even occur to me, but it should have. So the start of this, I really got to say, I said about how there were so many things that I should have expected that I didn't think things through. Let's talk about another expectation. Obviously, I expected Lindon to win. Obviously. Am I wrong? I would love a poll of everybody who has read the series and how many people were like, oh, I'm guessing that he will lose. Because I think we all assume loss equals dead, right? So I didn't believe that loss and survival were an option. And the fact that combine that with the other thing that I didn't expect, which is for Eithan to cheat. And I say cheat with an asterisk. Because it's not cheat like he tries to give Lindon an extra boost of power or a secret weapon. It's not like that, but he steps in and tries to stop the thing, even though I think we all knew the rules were last man standing, which usually translates to whomever is dead. And yet, Eithan sort of tries to, I'm sure he would have been fine if Jai Long had been the one who was down. He would have been like, yeah, finish it, kid. But as soon as it's his little pet, Lindon, all of a sudden he's like, oh, I don't like those rules anymore. I don't want to do it that way. And I really didn't expect him to straight up fight the ref, which is pretty much what happens. He he's like one of those parents on the sidelines at a baseball game who gets way too into the thing and winds up sort of embarrassing their kid, except he actually has the ability to do something here. This is him kind of punching the ref into the parking lot and just being like, all right, now we'll see what happens until the ref finally can make his way back from the parking lot to which I have punched him. And I never thought Eithan would stoop to that. I hate to use that word because it makes it sound really shady, but let's be perfectly honest. It is shady. Eithan, I am kind of on the ref's side here because the ref is and he's from the Naru clan, right? Is that what they're called? Nuru? He has the wings on his back. And basically his whole attitude is the Jai clan are trash. I definitely do not like them. And I probably would have no problem with the Aurelius clan in general. Except I fucking hate you so very much specifically. And his reasoning behind this is that Eithan essentially behaves as if none of the rules apply to him. Because when you're as powerful as Eithan is, they kind of don't. This is the thing that's so frustrating. I love Eithan. I mean, how do you not love Eithan? I mean, he's so fun and so weird and such a badass, and has managed to keep it so secret how much of a badass he is. However, half of what's fun about him is the fact that the rules don't apply to him, because he's just that powerful that he can kind of do whatever he wants. So simultaneously, I can love and enjoy him so much as a character, and also completely understand why somebody would fucking hate him. I really, really do. And from the outside, if it weren't for the fact that Eithan is on Lindon's side, I would probably just be like, oh, I'm so over this guy. It's just the fact that he is rooting for and supporting the guy that I am rooting for and supporting, that this is just entertaining to me. I'm just having a good time. If it's, if it's in any other context, I think I would find Eithan deeply irritating. So, dude has some points here. I'm trying to think what else I had as an expectation of how this would go down. I don't know. I think that those were the two main ones, is that I really thought Lindon would win, and I really thought that Eithan would just, kind of abandon Lindon. That's too strong a word, really. But that Eithan would see this as Lindon's trial by fire, and it's his responsibility to either get through it or not, and that he wouldn't step in. I sort of expected that this was going to be like in the Desolate Wilds when Lindon was in the pyramid. There's that point when he's leveling up to his iron body, and it looks like maybe he died. And Eithan's thinking to himself, if he died, it would really be a bummer, but what can you do? I sort of thought that was going to be the attitude that Eithan would have here. That it would just be, look, I really don't want you to die. I would like for you to do everything you can to win this and succeed. But if you don't, what can you do? And instead, it really feels as if Eithan has grown attached to Lindon in a way that's more than what I expected. That's not to say that, I don't want to say that he sees him as a son or anything, but I feel like there's definitely more of an emotional attachment than even Eithan probably expected. I wonder if Eithan went into this knowing that he was going to be willing to pull this kind of shit, because I would bet he would have said, if somebody asked him, that Lindon's on his own and it's his responsibility to win or lose. He has to stand on his own 2 feet. I have a feeling that once it came down to it and he saw Lindon struggling in front of him, that was really the moment where he realized, I really care about this kid, and I've invested a lot in him as well. I think that's also part of it. And not only is Eithan coping with that, but later on, we see that Fisher Gesha has grown very attached to Lindon, and she gets very defensive of him, and it is so good, because I wanted Fisher Gesha to feel this way about Lindon immediately, and I was disappointed in the Desolate Wilds when she doesn't fight on his behalf in the pyramid, when he gets captured and everything. She's just like, oh, I don't see any fishers here. Do you see any fishers here? Oh, I'm just going to go and mind my own business. And I was kind of like, oh, come on, Gesha, I really wanted you to have his back. And it seems like the author was like, no, we're going to do that. But not immediately. She's only known the kid a couple of weeks. There's no reason for her to put shit on the line like that. And now they have been paired up for a year. Paired up is too strong a word, but they've been working together for a year. She's really gotten to know him, and it really feels like that attachment has finally formed. I was impatient. I wanted it to happen in the way that it happens in so many things, where it's an almost immediate bond that's inexplicable, or he just sees something whoever the mentor or the teacher is like, oh, I saw something in you and I just knew. Fisher Gesha isn't soft like that. It takes a lot longer for him to earn her respect. And it was very satisfying once it happened. I appreciate that the author made me wait for it and was essentially telling me to be a little bit more fucking patient, because I'm not super good with that a lot of the time. But anyway, I keep on getting ahead of myself because I don't want to talk about the fight, because spoilers, Lindon loses an arm. And I don't love that. And look, I know that they're going to be able to replace it. And I knew that as soon as it happened. I was like, oh, but he's going to be able to get a prosthetic. And as far as I can tell in this world, prosthetics are pretty fucking good. So I'm sure he'll be fine, if not better. Nevertheless, the fact that he had to sacrifice this really sucks, because nobody wanted this. He didn't. Eithan didn't. Jai Long didn't. Jai Daishou didn't even, because he wanted Lindon to die, but that's a whole other situation. So, Eithan, at the beginning of this thing, greets Jai Daishou. You're in good health, it seems. Better than I last saw you. The Jai Underlord's hand shot up to his chest, clawing at the center as though his heart were seizing up at that moment. His wrinkled face twisted in hatred, but his voice was clear as he responded, "This is a waste of my time. Without your tricks, this duel is already over. You should have the boy's head delivered to me on a plate and save us all a day's travel." I asked him about that, Eithan said. He told me he prefers his head where it is. And I love that. Eithan is just like, yeah, I did suggest that maybe we could do that. And Lindon thinks to himself, oh yeah, that's not an exaggeration. He did say, this actually would be kind of resolved quickly if you would just let us cut your head off. I mean, I'm not saying that you should, but it would work. Now, in this moment where he his hand shoots up to his chest, I couldn't quite tell if this was just a reaction to Eithan because he hates him so much and he's so angry, or if this is Eithan doing something to him the way that he did to Lindon and Yaren and Eithan when they first met him. I get the impression it's pure reaction to Eithan's presence because he hates him so much, and probably there's a bit of PTSD from having the last encounter with Eithan be that time that he died. So maybe that's it. Let's see. So we have the other two patriarchs. Let's see. And another old man stood in the center, equally distant from both underlords. He wore the green armor of the Skysworn, but there was something on his back sticking up from his shoulders. And later on, we find out that these are wings. He looked like he could be Lindon's grandfather. His build was still powerful, and he wore his green armor more naturally than Renfei or Bairu, as though he had been born in it. Its plates were so scuffed and dented that the armor might well be as old as he was. His gray hair was long and matted, hanging down in tangled curtains. A large patch of his face was scarred and twisted, as though it had been burned, and he wore a large sword strapped to his back. So, basically, Lindon looks at this guy and is like, ooh, yikes, this dude looks like a badass. Lindon's tiny bit intimidated. And he does the whole, I witnessed this duel, yada, yada, yada. I'll not tolerate any further interference. And this is where Eithan tries to do his charm routine. It's a joy to have you here, Gwei. Of all the dual educators in the Empire, you're still the highest ranked, aren't you? It's honestly a pleasure to have such an esteemed... Eithan, one more word out of you, and I will personally beat you down into the center of the mountain. I don't have any love for the Jai clan, but as for you, if I saw you on fire, I'd hold an umbrella for you so the rain didn't put you out. I don't feel like that's entirely warranted. Oh my god, this is so good. I love it so much. Lindon rightfully, is like, God damn it, Eithan. How did you get on the bad side of the fucking referee? Why would you do this? He tells Eithan at one point, wipe that smile off your face. Heavens above, it sickens me to look at you. Oh my God, I love that. So he looks over at Jai Chen, who is looking rather worried. He's like facing Jai Long, but he's not trying to make eye contact right away. And she raises a hand towards him. So he waves a hand back. Then for the first time since entering, he finally looked straight at his opponent. Jai Long was already watching him. And Lindon sees that Jai Long is carrying a spear, but it's not the ancestor spear. And he feels particularly, like, buoyed by this. But it turns out that Jai Long does have the ancestor spear. It's just not visible to him at the moment. This is a duel for pride. As such, the champions will fight to death or incapacitation. I am here to ensure that the underlords cannot interfere, so fight without reserve. The bounds of your battle shall be confined to this room. If it seems you will breach these bounds, I will return you by force. Even though this is a low gold with a second weaker core against a true gold, it's still a fight between two great families. It will reflect official rankings as well as the reputation of both powers. If you can resolve your differences, do so now. And they're all just like, yeah, that's not really going to happen. Step to the center of the room and face your enemy. And they do this. It had been a year, an entire year, since he stood at the peak of the transcendent ruins. That didn't feel real. Where had the time gone? It couldn't possibly have been a year. He felt cheated. Suddenly, he felt like running to Eithan and begging out. Someone had made a mistake. He wasn't ready yet. He needed more time. So, this is when Jai Long says, I have to thank you for healing my sister. You killed my brother, but you gave me my sister back. For my part, we're even. And Lindon says, well, then we can walk away. I don't have a problem with you. And Jai Long says, oh, I would have done that already. I would have called it all off. I would never fight for the Jai clan at all, but it isn't up to me. And I like that later on, Lindon sees Jai Long's reaction to a command that he's given by Jai Daishou. And Lindon realizes exactly what it is that's happening. Like, I think it's interesting that the effects of an oath are that well known that when he sees Jai Long's body respond to Jai Daishou, Lindon immediately knows, oh shit, he made an oath. That's why he's doing this. This isn't like him being bent on taking my life. This is him being controlled by a bond, a magically made bond that he doesn't really have any options about. Because I feel like it's important that Lindon know that. I want him to know that, you know? So Yaren has told him in preparing for this that, you know, Jai Long is going to expect you to come at him with Black Flame. And so he's going to react in a specific way because that's what he's going to expect your first attack to be. So you need to do something different in order to counter the defense that he will definitely have ready for you. So I'm not going to go beat by beat through this entire fight because really there's no need for that. But I will say that this whole, like, the fight just is so much less predictable than I expected, which is a good thing, of course. I mean, I like unpredictable as long as it still feels like it's grounded, and it is. And there's a couple of moments where it feels like Lindon's gotten the edge on Jai Long a little bit. And I thought, okay, you managed to surprise him. Maybe this is going to be all right. And let's see. Jai Long's motions blurred as he pulled his spear back, sweeping it vertically in front of himself, leaving a trail of white light on the air. That white light bloomed into a hissing serpent, which was instantly torn apart by the blast from Lindon's launcher. Lindon could feel the construct snap as he used it. He wouldn't get a second shot. This was the risk of using a construct after having it exposed for so long to let its essence dissolve. The launcher was just to keep Jai Long on the defensive. If he had used that speed to take a step backward and attack instead, he would have skewered Lindon through the gut by now. So I like this, that there's all these like tactics that he's using that are meant to be the opposite of what somebody like Jai Long would expect to be dealing with. I love the fact, too, that he had said in the beginning of the thing, I'll be as gentle as I can. And Lindon notes that means that Jai Long didn't come into this intending to kill. That was not what he wanted to do. And yet, that's also not out of the question. Despite the fact that he's saying I'll be gentle, he's still stronger than Lindon. And he is still in the position where he has to uphold his family's name. So that doesn't mean that it's not on the table. It's just the fact that he may pull his punches here. And Lindon has determined that he is not going to do that because he simply can't afford to. I was really pleased that Lindon was aware of this, that he was able to simultaneously hear Jai Long say, I'll be as gentle as I can, and appreciate what he means by that, but by no means become complacent and be like, oh, okay, well, he's not going to try and hurt me then. He's not a fool. You know, this is what we love about Lindon, isn't it? He's a good, sweet cinnamon roll boy, but he's no dodo. He is fully aware of the consequences of things and takes things seriously. As much as I think sometimes I worry that maybe Eithan will rub off on him and that he's going to stop like being as worried for himself as he should be. I sometimes think that having somebody like Lindon at your back, or not Lindon, Eithan at your back, can maybe cause you to fall into a sense of bravado because of the fact that this person supports you, without keeping in mind the very important fact that, yeah, they have your back, but that's their power, not yours. And if you're put into this kind of position where they're not really supposed to interfere, although he definitely does, you've gotten sort of high on yourself for no good reason. You didn't earn any of that. That was purely reflected glory from somebody else that you began to believe was like real for you. So I think I was sort of concerned that he would feel that. And I shouldn't have been, because Lindon is nothing if not constantly aware of his own shortcomings. He's, if anything, the fact that Eithan is so powerful seems to have done nothing but hammer it home to Lindon repeatedly that he wasn't as strong as he needed to be. So I appreciate that. He's got the right frame of mind here. So at one point he uses this like technique that turns the ground into basically like a tar pit to lock Jai Long in place. And Jai Long's core was open. He was swinging the butt of his spear up, intending to crack Lindon in the head, but Lindon was already close enough. And I love that we have the like moment thinking about Eithan and what he said. You may have noticed I don't have a gold sign, Eithan had said. No remnant, you see. I reached gold purely through accumulated power. We can do the same for you, if you like. Which, it sounds like that's what we're going to do. We're going to have Lindon continuing to level up without a remnant. And I love that. I think this is really interesting. It's putting him in a position of having to work a lot harder in many ways, but winding up with a weapon that is so much more versatile because of it. And that's really compelling to me. So he uses the empty palm and uses this on Jai Long. He reeled his pure Madra back to one of his cores. On his next breath, he drew from his other core. And he uses his black flame. And the burning cloak sprung to life around him. His Madra would run out quickly with the cloak active. He couldn't keep this up for long, but he didn't need to. Under the power of the burning cloak, Lindon kicked off the stone. He exploded with motion. There was a long frozen moment where Lindon's eyes and his opponent's met. Then Lindon stabbed him. This was the fourth and final construct he'd been allowed to keep. Made from only a remnant's claw with no binding involved, it was what she called a dead construct. It had no abilities apart from the properties of the Madra it was made of and any script you carved into it. In the case of this dagger, there was no script. Its structure wasn't solid enough to be carved, and even if it were, the pressure of a script would have torn it apart immediately. So it hits him and begins to wriggle on into his body, worms its way into the wound, which is really, really horrifying. I hated this. Like, this is the kind of weapon that I am absolutely understanding why Lindon would be like, oh, this is rad. I definitely want to use this. But it just feels so... And at one point, Jai Long says to him, you fight without honor, or something like that. And I kind of understood why he felt that way. It was like, I didn't really want to agree with him, but there was a sense of this being so, like, a little bit of a dirty trick, which is the point, right? We've seen Lindon try to cheat and succeed in cheating a bunch of times because he has used his advantages as he can. And I can't fault him for that. But it's just not realistic to the world. Like, the idea that people are going to not take advantage of every advantage they can get. It's odd to have a character like Lindon, who is in his way so very sincere and upright and wanting to do the right thing in caring for people, and have that kind of characteristic coexist with somebody who is so willing to bend the rules and cheat and find shortcuts and loopholes for things. I think it's really interesting, and it makes total sense. But it's something that I keep having to remind myself of, because I'm so used to a character who is otherwise as focused as Lindon is, as hard a worker as he is. Lindon, in so many ways, regarding his leveling up, is absolutely willing to put in the work. It's not like he won't take elixirs and stuff, because he will, and some would call that shortcuts, but he is still willing to do what needs doing. So it's not a matter of laziness. And I think that's the difference between when people think of cheating, what they imagine versus what is happening here. You think of cheating and you think of somebody who had the resources, the time, and the ability to learn to do something the, quote, right way. And simply they didn't choose to do it that way. They chose to do something that was easier because they didn't feel like putting in the effort. That's how we think of cheating. Lindon is not in that kind of position. He was born with a disadvantage, and he has simply been doing his best with the materials that he has, which in a lot of ways takes more work than doing it the other way. And so it's key to remember that he doesn't shy away from hard work. That's not where this, like, penchant for cheating comes from. It's simply because he is used to never being at the same level as whatever it is that he's going up against. So, anyway, all this to say, when Lindon pulled out this friggin' knife that basically tries to worm its way into Jai Long's body, my whole, like, reaction was just kind of like, that is fucked up. Ew, I hate that you're using this. And then I had to be like, that's not fair, though. Like, this... I feel like I just have this gut response that's like, I don't like it. And I need to get over that a little bit. Here it is. You fight like a coward. That's what Jai Long says. His words were choked out one at a time, but they emerged tinged with rage from a tightening jaw. So at this point, it seems like Jai Long has been effectively immobilized. And Lindon sort of looks over at the ref because he's thinking to himself, all right, this dude hasn't said that we have to kill each other explicitly. He said until one is, immobilized, and he has been. So maybe this is done. Maybe I did enough here. But he looks over at Narugwe, and Narugwe is having no real reaction, just watching this with no apparent attempt to call it quits for this fight. So Lindon's realizing, all right, well, I guess I'm going to have to hit this guy with fucking Black Flame and kill him, even though I'm really not interested in doing this. I know that he wouldn't want to do this in my place either. This sucks. And he tells, as he's like gathering Black Flame, he tells Jai Long to surrender. A white light flashed beneath Jai Long's clothes. It was fitful and weak, struggling against the intrusion of the path of twisted blood. But Jai Long's head snapped straight again. He dropped his spear, but pulled both his arms back under control. The brown hands holding his ankles started to dissolve, the nether-drained swamp dissolving under white light. Lindon released his dragon's breath. He had no grudge against Jai Long. The man was an obstacle and one he had to pass to continue, but not quite a true enemy, and he would hate to think that he had healed Jai Chen only to kill her brother. Over the intervening year, one thing had become clear. He was the weaker party. He didn't have the luxury of pulling his punches. If he didn't come at Jai Long intending to kill, he wouldn't win. So he releases the fucking fire, and then all of a sudden, Jai Long pulls out this fucking ancestor spear. And Lindon is like, oh, fuck, god damn it. And Lindon says, how had he gotten it back? Where had he gotten it? Lindon thought Eithan had taken it. Now, I don't remember this. Why would he think that Eithan had it? Was that something that happened that I have forgotten about, like in the trial caves or something? Because at one point, Eithan picks this up after all is said and done because it basically gets destroyed. And Eithan thinks to himself, the original ancestor spear was back in the pyramid. And I was like, so wait, is this not the original one? There was just a lot of confusion for me surrounding this spear in these chapters, and I feel like I missed something. So Eithan had said to him, if Jai Long is only a true gold, I think you've got a pretty decent chance of winning. If he's an underlord, then surely they won't continue with the duel. It's only remotely fair in the first place because we're both technically gold. Or that's what Lindon had said. And Eithan had replied, if Jai Long has truly reached underlord, he will become my problem, but there is a third option. Reaching underlord requires a true gold to clear 3 distinct stages. If he has cleared the second, weaving soul fire from aura, then he will defeat you instantly. The first stage, however, is opening a space in your soul. And if he pulls a weapon from nowhere, he's cleared the first stage. That means he has taken half a step into the Lord realm, which I believe is what we saw Jai Daishou do in order to carry his weapon here, as he's managed to open a space in his soul to hold that weapon. And at this point, this attack turns around and hits Lindon, the snake, slicing him. And he completely falls apart. He just doesn't have anything left. All of his Madra is going to, like, trying to heal him. He loses all of his strength. And Lindon is watching Jai Long coming at him and still not trying to kill. He comes at him to get his leg, which would be merciful, except, of course, Lindon doesn't want to lose his fucking leg. And at this point, Eithan steps up and he says, enough. And Jai Long stops because he's clearly hoping for a reason to not kill this kid. And Eithan tries to be like, look, obviously the Aurelius family has lost. Jai Daishou, you found somebody to replace you. Congratulations. And Jai Daishou is like, fuck that. Kill him. What are you doing? I'm absolutely not stopping this here. And Jai Long says he surrendered. We're done. But Naru Gui is like, no, sir. We never said that, if you'll remember. I said death or incapacitation. Surrender was never one of those options. So, I hate this so much. So he turns around and Eithan again tries to stop it. Let's not go too far. I've admitted my loss. I will accept the cost of losing. And this is when Naru Gui really starts to get irritated and is like, no, dude, that is not how this works. And Eithan tries to be like, man, you're just being like this because you don't like me personally. Don't make this a thing between the two of us just because you don't like me. And this dude doesn't even reply to Eithan. He just turns back and is like, fight, keep going. And poor Lindon is really getting fucking pummeled here. It is not good, kids. He comes in so strong at first that it really had me thinking he might be able to pull this one out. Not completely. And let's see. His black flame core had dimmed slightly with that cut, and his iron body was still trying to heal his right arm. He would run out of Madra very quickly at this rate. So eventually, there comes a point at which Jai Long holds out the spear and is like, dude, if you just let me take your arm, which is in a bad way anyway, that will end this. And I know it sucks, but just do that. And we can be done with this. And I'm trying to find the spot. Oh yeah, here it is. Eithan tries to literally jump in, and he gets frozen mid-step because of this wind aura. To which Naru Gui sees him, and he's like, "Oh yeah, we definitely knew that you were gonna try some shit, and that's why we chose this spot for this fight, because that way I've got access to some fucking aura or Madra to use." Jai Long stood with the Ancestor Spear held loose in one hand. He didn't attack immediately. "You're a coward, and you have no shame. I've killed people who deserved it less than you, and slept soundly afterwards. But I still don't want to kill you. Give up the arm." So, Lindon, like the shady little sausage that he is, holds out his arm, and is like, "All right, yeah. I'll do that. That's fine." And then he lets Black Flame go as Jai Long gets close with the spear. And it says the spear had flashed as it absorbed the cloud, but as Lindon had hoped, a lick of the diffusing flame landed on the spear's haft, and a small puff of essence burned upward. And so that's just enough to give Lindon the clue that, yeah, this spear can be destroyed. And this is when fucking Eithan again tries to step in with a wave of pure Madra in order to disperse everything. In order to get free. He is going for it, man. He keeps on doing this. I will not allow this, Eithan said. Not yours to allow. I follow the rules, Aurelius. Our laws are etched in steel. And at this point, Jai Long is feeling himself a little bit because he is starting to mistake the fact that Naru Gui is despises Eithan for support for the Jai clan. And Naru Gui has to be like, you know what, dude, you go fuck yourself too. This isn't about you and him. This is about this dude who always thinks that the rules don't apply. He trespasses on the imperial palace and escapes without punishment. He moves behind the scenes of the empire, pulling strings, violating the laws of the realm without fear. He raised a black flame and expected to get away with it because he always does. And he says, I will uphold the laws of the empire. If you violate them as well, you will join him. And I was just like, oh man, I can't even be that mad at you, dude. You honestly make a really solid point. So Jai Daishou, who had been trying to sort of ingratiate himself, goes back. And this is when Lindon threw himself forward, his hand forward as though hurling a fistful of water. The Madra wasn't concentrated enough to hurt Jai Long, but vanished as soon as it touched the true gold Madra flowing through his skin. But the slappy technique did its job. More sparks sprayed up from the haft of the ancestor's spear, though the spearhead absorbed part of the power safely. That Madra spiraled down the weapon's script, gathering at the butt until Jai Long vented it. And Jai Long expels Black Flame right into Lindon's face, which I should have seen coming. And I love that it says Lindon should have expected it as well. I really also felt that way. I was like, oh man, of course, if he's gathering that, it should have, I should have known. And it doesn't kill him, but it again drains because he's just using so much for healing and for protection here. So this is when he starts to get a glimpse of what's underneath Jai Long's, the bandages over his head. And at this point, another wave of pure Madra lashed the room. This time, Lindon was ready. Lindon lunged forward, driving the empty palm into Jai Long's core. For a second time, it connected. And Jai Long grabbed him to push him off, one hand still holding the ancestor's spear, and Lindon switched to Black Flame. He was close enough that he might have been able to kill his opponent, but in the moment he didn't even consider it. He had already set his target. With both hands, Lindon grabbed the white shaft of the ancestor's spear and let Black Flame flow. The fire spread through the weapon as though through a dry log, sending sparks spraying into the air like blood from a severed artery. Jai Long cast the red-hot weapon aside, shouting in horror. And it just disintegrates. It's just ash. And Jai Daishou is flipping out. Oh my god, he is losing his mind. And all of a sudden, it gets really hard to breathe. There's pressure on him, and I'm like, oh, we've seen this before. And Lindon looks over at fucking, at Gui, and this dude is pushing everybody down using a ruler technique. And he is losing his fucking mind. Interfering with a Skysworn in the course of his duties, no matter your background, even you can't. A pulse of Madra blasted out of Eithan. Lindon could see it. It burst from his chest the size of a galloping horse, sweeping through Naru Gui in an instant. The cage around Eithan vanished as the technique passed through Gui's body. It did not, however, pass through his wings. The spread gold sign caught the blast of pure Madra like a sail catching the full force of a hurricane's wind. The Underlord was ripped back by his own wings, hurtling out over the abyss and dropping. Honestly, I wanted to be on Eithan's side enough to enjoy this moment, but all I could think was how that guy had just been proven so completely right. You know, he's just like, you just want the rules to not apply. And Eithan is literally like, correct. I do not want them to apply. Get out of here. And just like fucking tosses him. Oh, that sucks. That sucks. I hate it. Oh, God. And he manages to like come back up. But it's just the fact that he did this. And Eithan says, you almost made me lose my temper, I'll admit. I'm not here to fight you. I just want to delay you. I have a different target. And this is when the Jai Daishou fucking confrontation happens. And Jai Daishou, I love this moment because as it begins, Jai Long runs over and scoops his sister up and then runs off with her. For a second, it looks like he's going to rush over and help Jai Daishou. And then he does not do that. And it's great, and I loved it. So this is when Jai Daishou pulls out his fucking weapon. And also, Jai Chen has this weird thing that's going on here. She has like a dragon sprite sort of thing. Like it looks to him like the river. I forgot the name of the thing. River seed, but it's like dragon shaped, but made out of similar sort of material. And she's using that to drag the remains of the spear away, which I thought was so kind of adorable. And I really want to see how this looks. I want to see it in the author's mind. So this is when we see Jai Daishou yell to Jai Long, serve the clan, but I pretty much talked about that already, and his attempt to do the thing. And then his arm getting sliced off. And he goes unconscious for pretty much the remainder of this encounter. Jai Daishou is fighting Eithan, and Eithan is using scissors again, which I don't know why that's so fucking funny, but it just is. And he keeps on doing things to just emphasize the fact that he's toying with Jai Daishou. He is completely capable of killing him at any point, but he isn't doing it. And he's calling him a weak old man. Unless you have something left, Eithan said, smiling. And this is the moment where, like, in the background, this moment coincides with Lindon losing his arm. And Eithan is, we find out later, kind of fucked up over the fact that Lindon lost his arm. He didn't intend for something like this to happen. He doesn't want to admit it, but it's clearly bugging him that this is how it went. Meanwhile, Jai Daishou is really irritated that he didn't bind Jai Long more firmly with their pact that they made with his oath, because he really thinks if I had been able to get him to make a firmer oath, I might get him to actually kill the kid. But just saying serve the clan and taking his arm off, technically he's fulfilling his oath, and that's not what I want. I want him to kill him, and there's no way to make him do that. So he pulls out this thing called the Archstone, or Arkstone, depending, I think. And when he pulls it out, it basically draws Madra from everything. And it becomes too much for him to hold. at first. He's like, yeah, this is it. I'm powering up. This is going to be amazing. And he's pulling from Eithan in particular and can't get over how fucking much Madra is coming out of him. And as he's continuing, he starts to feel the power of the Aurelius bloodline in him and is like, oh shit, this is what it's like? This is rad. I love this. And then all of a sudden he gets stabbed in the neck, and we find out later that it was Jai Chen. And she used what was left of the ancestor spear to do it, which means that she winds up absorbing some of the Aurelius ability because she used that spear to do it, which is pretty interesting to me. As Eithan says later, it won't work the same way. He can use this ability without even thinking about it or expelling any Madra, and she won't be able to use it that way. She will have to use Madra. But still, like, that's a pretty fucking big level up. And this whole moment is just, I really enjoyed the whole like series of events that lead to this moment. So Eithan is like watching this whole thing and it's just like, good God, this was not supposed to go this way. And I love first of all, this is an opportunity for him to grow as he's looking at poor Lindon losing his arm, and then is like, that's not true. I'm just saying that. Like, he does admit that to himself. And everybody begins to see that there is a remnant rising from Jai Daishou's body. And a moment later, they're like, oh, but we're not going to have to worry about it because all of this fucking Madra, like, it overtook him. And so his remnant isn't even, it doesn't come out of him. It just like falls to the ground and like completely dissolves right away. It just disintegrates. The Archstone itself was capable of siphoning much more powerful than it had demonstrated today, but its wielder had limits. Jai Daishou had drawn everything he could with no attention to his own safety. He had eroded the foundation of his own soul, so his Madra wasn't stable enough to form a whole remnant. If he had lived a little longer with his spirit shredding itself apart, his core would have shattered so completely that a remnant wouldn't have formed at all. So that's kind of interesting. And this is when the Skysworn is like, good God, he took a weapon from that fucking vault. They're going to come after us. This fucking guy. And I love that after all of this, and rightfully yelling at Eithan, in the end, Jai Daishou is the one that's like the biggest shame. He's the one that Narugwe is just like, I hate this dude. Oh, man, come on. And Jai Long is concerned because his sister seems to be like convulsing. But it turns out there is no need, that she's going to be okay. She's just going to have difficulty controlling her Madra for a while. But it will come back underneath her control. And he takes the last piece of the spear off the floor. He could certainly find a use for that. He still had the original locked away in Serpent's Grave. And I was just like, what? What does that mean? Again, I don't know. I don't know what I'm supposed to know and what I missed. So, the last chapter of this section, and I'm way out of time, but I'll do what I can here. And if I have to come back and talk about it again at the beginning of the next episode, I will. The next chapter opens with Lindon waking up and realizing that his arm is gone. And Geshe is offering him several different types of prosthetic arm. And she has one that's sort of perfect. I'm trying to find the description of it here. So, yeah, it's lucky. You're lucky I favor you. I made this one myself. This hand had 6 fingers with an extra joint on each one, making them look somewhat like an insect's legs. They were tipped as though clawed, and the arm was inhumanly thin. It seemed to be made of glass, with the slightest hint of color shooting through it. The color changed every second, a wisp of green brightening to a hint of yellow before darkening to orange. It was an interesting blend of cloud, wind, and water Madra, but I found it especially intriguing when I found that it was also extremely close to pure. It was only barely tinged with other aspects of Madra, as though the artist who left it had cycled aura for no more than a month. Though this is a high gold arm, so that certainly could not be the case, I do wish I knew the story of this sacred artist. And Lindon is like, oh my god, because if this is pure, then it's like so compatible with him that it's almost crazy. Like, how could this be so perfect? And he asks, like, how can it be? And she says, good question. It won't bring a technique because there's no binding in it. And he's like, well, can't we put a binding in it? What about, we have some of the, like, bindings that we found in the thing, in the pyramid. And she says, well, we've studied that. We never had a name for the white Madra. Our dredges could measure some of its properties. These notes call it hunger Madra. As far as we can tell, it's compatible with everything. Dread beasts attack us with Madra of all aspects. These notes reference an origin for this Madra, a single source. They were trying to breed sacred beasts that left remnants of this aspect, but they never made it. It doesn't matter, though, because I could put your binding into this arm, but there would be no framework for it. We would need more hunger Madra to reinforce and adapt the arm to handle the binding. Do you really want a hand that devours Madra? It could start feeding on the spirit of anyone you touch. And Lindon's like, yeah, that sounds fucking great. And she's thinking, I think, in more of a practical way. So, anyway, I will have to come back to this a little bit later because I'm way over time. But I want to talk about the conversation that Lindon has with Eithan, because Lindon rightfully is somewhat angry at Eithan here, and I really liked it, so I want to give that conversation its due. So, I apologize, Andy, for going over time, but this was a very eventful series of chapters. I don't feel I'm entirely to blame. I did my best, and I promise I will cover this stuff at the beginning of the next episode tomorrow. All right, everybody, thank you again so much for listening. I hope that you're enjoying the coverage, and I'll be seeing you again soon with a new one. Until then, toodaloo, motherfuckers.
That was an Unspoiled Network podcast.